Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bennington Firehouse. This is the Bennington Select Board meeting. It is August 11th, 2014. Please join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to introduce the board. It's Tom Jacobs to the far left, Michael Keane, Sharon Bruss, our vice chair, I'm Greg Van Houten, it's Jim Carroll, Justin Corcoran, John McFadden, Stu Hurd is our town manager, and Linda Bermuda is recording. We have the minutes from July 28th, 2014. Do I have a motion to accept those?
I move they be accepted as printed.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Linda. Warrants. Do we have any questions on the warrants for Stu?
I just have one, and a number of them have been answered by Stu earlier. There was a car repair, 307504, and Stuart indicated that it was an accident involving an officer. Was that a recent accident? Because maybe I just missed it in the media.
He was actually involved in the accident responding to a single car, but he was responding to a call and had some trouble.
I'm sorry?
And had some trouble. Single car accident.
Okay. The only reason I'm really asking about it is when we have an expense of $5,000 for equipment or something that's damaged by a town employee, whether it's the police, fire department, or town highway department, I would appreciate it if we get information about that in advance rather than just reading about it in a warrant.
Okay?
Otherwise, I'm fine.
Did our insurance cover any of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, you have anything?
Nothing.
Sharon?
I just have one on page 3. We're still boarding animals for the Great Fields Kennel.
Yes, we're still boarding animals. These are animals that are either taken into custody and or abandoned or lost. And if we can determine who the owner is, we pursue them for the payment of those fees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks,
James?
Nothing today.
Justin, you have anything?
I don't.
John?
My only question is looking at the warrants as a whole and as a tracking method. When I look at the warrants, I'm thinking about the budget, right? But for me to actually track how we're doing month to month or week to week, I'd have to collect a lot of data. I was wondering if there's any way that we could kind of categorize these and make them a little more, I don't know, easily presentable, so we know that we're on the right track month to month.
Well, we do provide you in your packet, and you received one.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think it was, well, maybe last week, but it's a month-to-month report, and if, I know it doesn't tie the warrants directly to the month-to-month reports, but you do get a monthly accounting of where we are in the budget. I can talk with Melissa and try to understand how we might better
I guess
put these together.
when I'm looking at the warrants, what I'm trying to identify are things that stand out as expenses that we weren't anticipating, right? So if I was looking at our budget and, for the month of July, the highway department was anticipating material costs to be X, and then I see that it's jumping up from X plus this, and you have some line items in there that are saying we weren't anticipating this happening, that's what I'd be more concerned about. I don't know if there is an easy way to identify those items. I was just curious and thinking about it.
Let me give that some thought. I mean, we generally try to keep you informed when things go, in a sense, haywire.
No, absolutely.
But let me see what I can do in working with my accountant.
Okay.
Yeah. In that monthly statement, that end line item is the percentage to budget. So
Yeah.
that's what I use generally as a
Yeah,
gauge.
absolutely.
If I see something spike, I'll generally shoot an email and say, where'd that go? But yeah, if there's something out of the ordinary, we obviously want to know about it.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, that's the end of warrants. Next item will be citizens. If you have any citizens with a question or a statement they'd like to make, please stand up. Joanne, go ahead.
Hi. It's Joanne Ehrenhaus, the Director of the Chamber of Commerce here in Bennington, and I'm here tonight to remind all of you out there, all of you out in TV land, and the Select Board, et cetera, not to forget to come out for our Battle Day Parade next week. It's really going to be special. It's the 50th anniversary, and Saturday night, with the weather cooperating, there will be fireworks, so get out and enjoy it. Celebrate the 50th anniversary of our very special Battle Day Parade. And then, August 30th and 31st, I would invite everybody to come out to the Southern Vermont Garlic and Herb Festival out at the Camelot Village. So I'll be back in another couple of weeks to tell you about Car Show. All right.
Joanne, where are the fireworks going to be?
They're going to be put off, I guess, the same place in Willow Park. But I can tell you from experience with the Welcome Center, we had several hundred people up there at the Welcome Center on 4th of July, prime location to see the fireworks. And we have wonderful bathrooms. Oh, that's all. All right, thanks. Any other questions? Okay. See you all at the parade.
Mr. Reynolds, go ahead.
My name is Robert Reynolds, taxpayer. My water bill and sewer bill, they're all caught up. But tonight, I'm here going back to the revote onto the water bond. Now, myself and the different ones I associate with, we went after and we got all the minutes of the different meetings to see who and how the select board went about this. We can find no place where anybody on the select board had made a motion for to have a second vote onto the water bond issue. We now I'm looking over the different things. The manager's report spoke of the revote for the water bond to be June 17th. All right, how can you set up a vote on a water bond when no one on the select board ever made a motion for a second water bond vote? The minutes from the motion was made. In other words, you, the select board, use Robert's Rules of Order for your setup. Now, if there had been a motion, it should have been in the minutes. There was nothing in the minutes on the water vote for a motion, nor if there had been a motion, there was no second, so we don't know who it was that would, and then there was no discussion and no vote made. We don't know who, if there was ever somewheres a motion made that we missed. This is what we're looking for. We'd like to have that published. If there was a motion made, who made it? Who seconded it? Discussion? And what the vote was, pro and con. Who voted for, who voted against?
Mr. Reynolds? My memory is that that vote was taken at the planning section meeting, the meeting before the bond public hearing, that we had several presentations of designs, and the select board voted on that and chose that to be the change in the bond. Is that, you're saying that
It wasn't in the minutes.
it wasn't in the minutes?
No. We combed through those minutes, and most of us went really to try to find who and when and everything this is supposed to have taken place.
Greg,
Greg, I don't recall the,
Sorry, go ahead, Stuart.
if I may, and I,
With this here, one, Christopher Wright and myself paid a visit to our town manager to see if he could come up with an answer for us. I'm going to read your letter, Stuart, to me.
save me from reading it too.
Dear Bob, I have reviewed the various minutes of preceding the water bond vote. You will note on May 12, 2014, in the manager's report, portions of the meeting, the board discussed alternating ways or dates the vote the town clerk requested. In the previous meeting, the board had projected a July or September vote. June 17 was what they come up with. The bond went around the table. How come we were in the discussion of this, that somebody did at that time made a motion? I noticed going through the minutes of most of these from the original bond up through. If they have something, Mr. Carroll, when he makes something, he comes up with a motion. There's a second, the way it should be. Okay. Each member individually agreed to the vote date. The only member not quoted was Jim Carroll. The chair declared that the consensus, now consensus can amount to one or many. Was there anybody in disagreement or anything? According to this should have been put through a vote, not a consensus. Otherwise, you hashed it out among each other here to get a consensus on this water bond vote.
Well, that was for the date, not for the water bond. The bond article had been voted on previous to that. What you're talking about there is the date to set the election, the actual election.
Well, I'm going
So
to
what-
request,
Well, I can find that for you. I guarantee I can find you what meeting that was and where that was.
Greg, I don't recall the date, but I believe it was near the end of a meeting we had.
point of order, Chair, point of order. I have the floor.
And I just,
Rules of order says,
I also want to correct you on something. We've
All right,
never,
I'd like to finish
we've
this
never
here.
formally adopted Robert's Rules of Order. We use it as a
And
guide,
because
but you go
on
ahead.
my hearing,
Yeah.
I don't get everything that you're saying.
Okay,
All right?
you got it.
A little present from many years of service. Now, the question that's going around with the different groups, was this water bond vote legal? Then also, the other thing that was discussed quite a little bit was one of the things that Mike said in letters to the editor. It's time that we change our to a mayor type of. So now, these answers we are requesting to be posted in the banner or the local paper so we can see what the heck is going on. There's going to be quite a few of the members that I am associated with. They're probably watching it tonight, but also they're asking a lot of questions. And these particular ones, they're looking for an answer, and they're requesting that it be put in the Bennington banner or the local paper. Okay. Thank you for your time,
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds.
and good night.
We'll get you that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
the vote was legal.
Yeah.
The warning governs the action. The board by consensus, set the date. The warning was posted, people voted, the bond passed. It is legal.
Okay, and I know we found that, the minutes where the vote of the board happened before too, so we can get that.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mary Garish. I live here in the town of Bennington. And I'd like to speak briefly to an issue, which is the affordable housing project. And I was out of town at the time that a lot of this was discussed. In fact, I was in DC. And people were saying to me, you're really lucky. You live in Vermont and you live in Bennington, and it's really nice to live in Vermont. People really care about each other. And I am always very proud to say that I am from Vermont, because people always say things like that, no matter where I go. When I came back this time, I have to say, I was really crushed to see the dissension and the hatred and the stigma and the prejudice that existed between two factions of our town that seem to feel that they're so different when they're all human beings and should all live with human dignity. So I'd like to ask everybody in the town to please uphold Vermont's reputation as being a leader in civil and human rights, and think about that before we continue this foolish argument. Thank you.
Greg, before we go on from that, no, thank you very much. No, just going off of the topic that you just brought up, I know we had a conversation earlier a little bit about trying to move this forward sooner than later to a vote. Even myself at the last meeting had said that I thought we should wait for the DRB's process to go through. I made a mistake on that. One doesn't really have anything to do with the other, and I think we owe both sides of the coin, the opportunity to move on from this in one direction or another. So I'd like to see this get put on our next agenda for us to make our final decision of whether or not we're going to accept that grant money or not, and then pass forward it from there.
Okay.
Is that something we can discuss a little bit here at the moment and try to
Well, let's
solidify
get
that?
through citizens, and I think we should put that, maybe we put the discussion on the agenda. I don't know that we'd be ready for that with the terms of the grant and, conditions of the grant and all that, but we could certainly have that
Something
discussion.
I'd like to, hash out tonight.
Because I tend to agree with you.
Yeah.
There's no reason for us to wait, especially, with what's happened, so. We don't have on the agenda to discuss now, so, tonight, so. I
Well,
don't
we
wanna
can
have
alter that.
discussion.
We can add that onto our agenda right now by consensus if we want to.
Do you want to have a conversation about the
Yeah,
time?
I think it'd be helpful. And I think we touched on it the last meeting. And I don't think the DRB discussion has anything to do with our deliberations. But I do think this is significant enough not to just be part of a regular meeting agenda. I'd rather see it as a specific, special meeting.
All right, well,
with
let's not get into the conversation right now. In the middle, since do we have a consensus to discuss this tonight?
Oh, you want
I
to
would say-
talk about it?
We can add it onto our
Yeah,
agenda. We can add it onto our
sorry.
agenda at any point in time.
Yeah.
Do we have a consensus to do that after citizens
Go ahead.
are done?
Fine with me. I just,
Yeah, Jim? Okay with
I'm
that?
getting tired of
Okay.
I guess I'd like to see it as a
Okay.
separate meeting, but.
All right.
Would I be able to have a clarification? How do you make a decision on a grant when there's no application presently on the table? How does that work?
Clarify that, Mary. I'm not understanding what you're asking. I'm sorry.
The application has been pulled from the DRB. The application is not present right at the moment. So how do you folks put an agenda item on for the next meeting when there's no application to put $700,000 towards what?
We're looking at a completely different issue, Mary. The DRB issue is to whether or not they can build in a certain permitted concept versus whether or not we take in monies from the state, or the one doesn't have to do with the other. The DRB's decision really doesn't, and I made a mistake 2 weeks ago when I said we should wait. We shouldn't wait. One has nothing to do with the other. Whether we accept the granted funds or the DRB approves the project, they're two completely different issues.
Justin, there is no application presently on the table.
For the DRB, but there is absolutely still money that we have to make a decision whether we're going to take it in from the state or not. Those are two completely different issues.
But on what project?
on the same project that they've applied for.
You can't decide on something if you don't have an actual application before you, and that has been withdrawn.
Mary, you're confusing the issue. The DRB issue and the piece of whether we take the finances in are two completely different things. They're just not the same issue. The one has nothing to do with the other. The DRB's decision is not going to be predicated off of any decision we make here, nor should ours.
May I ask what the $700,000 would be going towards? What project?
You act like it's going to disappear and go away. They're going to refile. They're going to. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but they're going to refile and apply for it. We still have to decide whether we're going to take that money in.
But they haven't refiled yet, so
Mary.
how can the board right now?
I won't argue with you over
I'm
it.
not-
That's just a point of
Justin,
order.
I'm
That's
not arguing,
Our,
I just needed
the
a
request to the board
clarification.
was regarding a grant, that if they were awarded a grant for this project, would we be willing to administer the grant? The application to the DRB is the building permit process. So, I mean, if they don't get the building process, then the project doesn't happen, they don't get the grant. But in the case that they move forward with the building permit process, they have a request as to whether or not we would administer the grant, so.
And I am sorry if this board feels that when you're asking a question of clarification that you're arguing. I'm still not sure how you can actually agree to take something when there's a withdrawn application. But-
The only thing I'm trying to do is just see that we get a clear, concise way of moving forward with this, so everybody who has to show up here every Monday can have an answer to their question.
Kathy Hoisington, Realtor. Mary, sorry we haven't met before. Would love to have a dialogue with you. I want to assure you there is no hatred involved. And using the word prejudice is a very deep meaning word. Prejudice, by definition, means a lack of education and not telling the truth. Those of us that have taken the position of not voting for this project at this time are very, very concerned with the welfare of the whole town and this neighborhood, and the prejudice should not even be mentioned in that context. That is ugly, that is hateful, and that's not what we as good citizens are about.
That was your letter.
Chris?
How you doing tonight? My name's Chris Wright. I'm from Bennington. Probably everybody knows me by now. Tonight I will address the chair and kindly request that any response that I request be directed to me through the chair. Before I get started, I'd like to address the FEMA appeal process that will be discussed tonight. Given the importance of the FEMA appeal issue, I really think it should have been an agenda item so any interested taxpayers, persons, or entities would have had a better chance to have known about it and be present at this meeting. The town has 60 days to file the appeal, and will be given the same allowances if it was sent in on day one or on the last day, so why rush it?
Chris, would you have suggested that we didn't file the appeal?
Excuse me?
Would you have suggested that we didn't file appeal with FEMA for the funds that we're supposed to recuperate?
We take our time with discussing it so that,
What would you have suggested we did differently in that?
put it as an agenda item, warn it properly, and then give it some, we have plenty of time to appeal. That's not a problem, and the appeal's probably already been worked on. Just allow it to settle, so that everybody gets a chance to add input on it. Get with you guys, maybe people have questions about it and don't understand certain things about it, and just let the dust settle, so to say, so that when it's all done and said, there won't be any questions or comments or criticisms at the end, and it'll make everybody's job easier probably.
So you agree it was good to file the appeal for the FEMA reimbursement?
I don't know the whole issue
Okay.
on it. I need to know more about
Okay, thank you.
it. Did you all bring the information?
Mr. Wright,
about this
could I
whole
ask you,
event?
what are your specific questions and objections to the FEMA appeal process here?
I haven't built that yet, and I will get back to you at some point with that. I have a lot of questions about how that was applied for, what was applied for, what was paid for, what should or shouldn't have been paid for. Obviously, FEMA has a question because they're not paying for all of it. So there must have been something that they see is an issue. So I'd like to get deeper into that and find out more about that as we progress. So maybe something will come out tonight, maybe something will come out tomorrow.
Stuart, do you know how common it is for FEMA to deny original applications for funding reimbursement?
It's 100% common. In fact, we have discovered throughout the state of Vermont that many smaller municipalities without professional staff have actually dropped their appeals because they didn't have the time, the effort, or the willingness to pursue the monies that were in fact at one point thought to be eligible. And I know we were going to talk about this later, but it's up now. We have the state of Vermont, we have our congressional delegation, we have a river scientist. All of these folks have believed that our work and our effort is eligible. And we must go through the process of appeal in order to convince FEMA. And if you recall, when this particular project worksheet was submitted, FEMA said 0. And we're now up over $2.1 million through the appeal process. So we were going to present this to you later. I don't really care whether the board makes a decision to appeal this week or next. That's not the issue. Chris is right, we have time. But certainly, the board has been proactive on this process in the past. We assumed that you would be proactive in the process going forward.
Did you bring the information that you had available for the solar farm on 401 Barney Road?
I don't have everything. I wasn't able to dig up all that stuff at a time.
I asked you if you had specific questions or if you had specific things that you were looking for to give it to us in advance.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, so here I am the 5th time in front of the select board. I've been to the planning commission, communications with the managers, just about everybody else involved with this project, and a good number of other people and entities that will probably soon be involved with this project. Here are my concerns. I came to the board one other time and I mentioned about fire leakage. This is something that does actually happen. It has happened, and it's a major concern to me, and it should be to you. I've spoken to the area EMS, fire, and police, and they all agree that if there is a fire or leakage, they will maintain the distance and call for hazmat. Hazmat response to Bennington is 3 to 4 hours. They have to assemble a team and bring it here, and it could be quicker, it could be longer. 3 to 4 hours is a long time. None of the agencies in the town have any training. Some of them don't even know if there's any training available. Big Solar Farm has been in Pownell for a long time, and I don't think they've ever even been trained yet. So what's to say the Bennington area fire, EMS, and police will get trained any faster? Again, hazmat is 3 to 4 hours. Think about that, 3 to 4 hours. A lot can happen in a fire or a leakage in 3 to 4 hours, especially a leakage right next to a river. The next concern is the previous land use. I don't know if you guys know, but the land was given to the town, or to the village of Bennington in 1964 by the Shields family in Woodford. I don't know what the original agreement was, but the town got it and the fire department immediately started using it. They did fire trainings there, they did clam bakes, they did a number of different activities on the property. During some of these fire trainings, hazardous materials were deposited on the property. Also, for as long as I can remember, and others that I've spoken to, maybe 100 years or more, people have been dumping things on that property. It was a convenient spot. They call it the drop-off road. It wasn't because that was the place to drop stuff off. It was because of the cliff that's around the other side by the river. But it got known that if you wanted to get rid of something, you bring it to the drop-off road and throw it up in those woods. So a number of other hazardous materials are possibly in that property. I've told a number of people about this, and I can't seem to find any interest in this. I don't know if they think I'm crazy, I'm going nuts, if I'm making it up, or what it is. But my family has lived next to that property since the 70s. Vermont State Trooper Paul Kipp lived there into the 60s, maybe before, with his family. I don't think this is something that any of us would make up. We know what goes on that property. You guys all know what goes on in the property next to your houses. So we've had a pretty good eye on that. My concern is, if it is found to be contaminated, that property, and a solar farm is put on top of it, is or isn't put on top of it, who is gonna pay for this cleanup? Or if it's investigated and found to be true, who's gonna pay for that? Is the town gonna pay for that? If we did that, but from what I understand, we are not eligible for any brownfields grants. The people that did it or contributed to it aren't available, those grants aren't available to them. So the next concern would be land habitat destruction. I don't know if anybody knows what a vernal pool is. It's a dumb little thing that we all played in when we were kids. It's a little pond where frogs and salamanders go. They breed in there, they live in there during the winter. There was 2 of those on that property, they're both gone now. I don't think anybody realized that when they went in there and did what they did. The forest is gone, the trees, the plants, threatened endangered wildlife, all gone. No Act 250, no permits, no warning, no nothing. One day it just happens. Everything is gone except for one woodchuck that moved in a while ago. Another concern is open space plan. That piece of property is in the open space park water resource. I can't remember the number, but it's in there. It was set aside for open space and park use. If you remember, some different people have talked about putting a park in there. Bill Thompson talked about putting a park in there at one time. The Bennington Fire Department was going to turn that into a park. They were going to develop that land into a park. It would have been a great thing to have. It could be that area is going to be turned into a solar farm soon. If they do, there'll be a fence all the way around it and you won't be able to access the property anymore. I noticed what Stu Hurd called Jersey barriers, I call them woodchuck barriers. Some rocks are put into the road so you can't drive up the road to go to drive to the river to go fishing anymore. As far as I know, that's a state road, and I can't imagine why anybody would block that off. So lots of access, and it's all gone, and I doubt there will ever be a park there. And getting back to the park thing, that'd be a great thing to have in this town. Another park on the other side of town that people can go to, especially one next to a river. A place to park, go fishing, have a cookout, camp out. I know Bill Thompson really, really wanted to turn that into a park. He was going to do all the work, he was going to pay for it himself. All he wanted in the end was for the town to take it over and take care of it. That never happened, and I have no clue why. The development of the land. I talked to the county forester, and he considers what was done to that land development. I'm wondering to myself, who paid for the development of this land? There was a manhole put in, the fire hydrant was extended, there was landscaping done. I don't know if, according to Dan Monks, FEMA paid for this to be done. If FEMA didn't pay for it, the taxpayers had to pay for it, somebody paid for it. But Dan says FEMA paid for it. Zoning. That area is zoned rural residential. A solar farm is not an allowed use in the rural residential area. I can't do it. Why should this company be able to do it? A gateway protection. In the town plan and the different plans of the county plans, these gateways to Bennington are protected. Hardwood Hill is a certain area. This isn't widely accepted in this area, but it is a gateway to Bennington. Would you want to look at the back end of a solar farm to be the gateway to the community? I don't think it's a great sign for anything. The historic district, it's not recognized yet, but Barney Road is the original Route 9. The original Route 9 is the Molly Stark Trail, not the Molly Stark Byway. Those are 2 different things. This is the trail that John Stark is thought to have taken to and from the Battle of Bennington. And here we have yet another battle on the same piece of property. Why should we not protect such a treasure? I'm going to reference the town plan again. This project is a violation of just about everything in the town plan. And the select board and the planning commission wrote that plan. I don't know if you guys remember back to that, but you can reference the plan and look in there and see if what they want to do up there is something that is in that plan. Same thing for the Bennington Regional Plan, the Bennington County Regional Plan. Permits. None except for a PSB certificate of public good, which is just a rubber stamp like so many we see these days. You and I can't build in our town without at least one permit. Why should this company be allowed to do that? As far as I know, no Act 250 permit was applied for or granted. No Fish and Wildlife permit was applied for or granted. No zoning permit was applied for or granted. No land use permit was applied for or granted. And no building permit was applied for or granted. We can't do that. We can't put $1 million operation on any one of our properties without at least applying for one permit and probably going before at least one board or commission in this town. We do little to help ourselves, so why did we do so much to help total strangers? I wondered about this. We're talking about helping each other in this town, but here comes these people that we don't even know, and we're rolling out the red carpet for them. Solar and telecommunications developers enjoy freedoms in this town we're not allowed to enjoy unless, of course, we want to put in a solar farm or a telecommunications tower. So the managers invited this, and the select board's allowed and approved it. And now it's time for you folks to listen to what I said to you tonight, and don't take it with a grain of salt. Really give it some thought, and figure out if this really was such a good thing for Bennington, because this will be the shape of Bennington to come. Is money worth all of the losses I have described here? Any one of those losses wasn't worth all the money in the world to me. I respectfully request that the board reconsider your original decision that allowed the manager to negotiate with Encore Redevelopment and your decision that allowed the project to come to our town. And just think about that. That's all I have.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Chris, just to let you know, I did look into the NFPA on the photovoltaic farms. It's the batteries that are in danger of leakage and whatnot. There's also the danger of electrocution. They do have training, one-day training seminars, and basically the big thing is making sure it's shut off, making sure that the electricity is neutral, which is difficult to do with an active panel that's in the sun. So
The transformers are also dangerous,
Yeah.
and they contain a chemical. Katie at the rescue squad, I got her name here. Well, I don't know her last name because she didn't write it down.
yeah, I know Katie.
But I talked to Katie and Jeff Vickers, and they both had concerns with us. Katie doesn't even know what the chemicals are in a solar farm. If she doesn't know what the chemicals are in a solar farm, we shouldn't have it in this town.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly worth looking at, especially if panel hasn't been trained, then, and they have them now, because we'd probably.
That's a
get
major concern.
we'd probably get
Hazmat,
called
3 to
in
4
on it.
hour.
Yeah.
If somebody's in there and the thing's burning, they don't help them. They just leave them there and let them burn. That's not good.
Anyone else? Is that it? One more in the back.
My name is James Nutley. I'm maybe a little confused. For you, you're going to vote tonight to accept or reject the $700,000?
No.
No.
No. We're going to have the discussion on how we're going to go about that, is what we're going to talk.
Accept it or reject it?
When we're going to have the grant, how we're going to, what process we're going to use to make that decision. Correct.
I'd like to add something else to this for your discussion. I'm a landlord. I've invested as my retirement. I've invited town staff. Mr. Oldham over here has been in my place. I complied. This is going to put me out of business. I cannot afford to compete with the subsidized housing programs. It's been 4 months since I had a tenant from the last one, and so far it's been 3 months so far, nobody has applied. And it's town staff, I guess say town staff, the state of Vermont, everybody's been there to improve it in town, so I make sure that I'm up to Boca code, very efficient, and I just don't see the need for this in Bennington because you're just going to eliminate the small mom and pop person that's invested into real estate. And I believe this board had some reaction when a big box store came in town. They was concerned about eliminating the small mom and pop business, and I feel that that's what they're doing to me. So I wish the board would please consider that before when they make their vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay. That's it.
Hi, Peter Brady. I'd like to make a couple comments on the proposed Shires project for Silver Street. First, let me state that as a former state representative of the very district that the project is proposed for, I worked with RAC on a number of projects under the leadership of Diane Binnick when she ran it. She had Mr. Broderick's job. I think under Ms. Binnick's leadership, RAC did many good things for Bennington by following their mission statement of refurbishing old, dilapidated housing stock and making it affordable for people to rent. I think as Vermont has the fifth oldest housing stock in the U.S., this worked out great for Bennington. I think this board, as the legislative body of this community, needs to decide if you're going to work with RAC in the future on buying up Bennington's green space and building new housing, or whether you should limit them to their mission statement of refurbishing older houses. I know we could use help on places like Pleasant Street and others around town where Pleasant Street has 2 abandoned buildings right now that could use refurbishing. Do you want a nonprofit group buying up valuable green space and developing? My opinion would be we don't want to do that in the future. Second, let me say that looking at the area, Silver Street, it's proposed for, I just don't think the infrastructure is suited for it. It's got a small, very small street. It's on a hill. Putting 24 units in the middle of that, it just seems it would overload that area. I think Mr. Broderick jumped the gun on this and didn't do his homework, and he dumped a load of crap on your lap. Political leadership is about bringing people to a consensus, not ripping the community apart. This is the most decisive issue I've seen in this town since we abolished the water discounts back in the 1990s. I think the board has a reputation of telling the residents the way it is. I think it may be time to back many voices that you've heard come before you and ask you not to support the project or the grant. I think Mr. Broderick should heed the board's warning if given that and not do these projects without consent of the board. I had a philosophy when in office that never failed me, and I would urge the board to adopt it. When you're in doubt, vote no. You can always come back later. I think when Mr. Broderick came into that meeting that night and needed an answer that night, that answer should have been no. I urge the board to have the town manager to write to the RAC board and ask them this project and any future projects that they bring before the board, go back to refurbishing the older housing stock that we have everywhere around town. The North Branch Street project was different, as it's towards the outskirts of town, and it's in a much less congested area. And a lot of it was in despair over there. None of the residents fought it, as it cleaned up some of the neighborhood, and property values are all the better for it today. I don't think this should be the norm, though. I thank you for your time, for listening to my opinion, and wish nothing but the best for Bennington. Good luck.
Thank you.
Somebody else speak, Greg.
Who's it? Oh.
Hi, my name is Jean Connor. First of all, I'd like to apologize for reading my remarks, but my cheat sheet will help me say what I want to say succinctly and clearly. Full disclosure, I have just joined the board of Shires Housing, but this development was voted on 3 times before I got on the board, and I can guarantee you my feelings would be the same whether I was on the board or not. Oh, I also live 3 blocks from the Monument View development site. Watching this debate unfold, I am overwhelmed with sadness. The tone of this organized group against the Shires development has been shocking, extremely mean-spirited, and disingenuous in their attacks against John Broderick, the Select Board, the DRB, our interim school superintendent, and the people whom Shires Housing serves, which is particularly disturbing to me. The repeated use of the phrase, "those people," makes me cringe. I have been married to one of those people for 30 years. He is not lazy or a criminal. He has a master's degree and contributes a lot to this community. Words are powerful and can be hurtful. I believe the best decisions are made when people of differing opinions can come together and find common ground, but arguments need to be based on expert opinion, reliable data, and factual information, not emotion. This ugly debate is damaging our spirit as a community, and it is sending an awful message to the rest of the region. The perception is decisions are made by an angry mob, and we treat each other with disrespect in Bennington. Shouldn't we strive for better than that? Shouldn't the goal be to make decisions through thoughtful consideration and civil discussion instead of by who can yell the loudest and sling the most mud? This is not who we are as a community. I have spoken to many people who are in favor of Monument View, but they won't come forward because they're afraid of the repercussions from those who are so vocally against it. For that reason, the public debate being played out in the banner and at meetings like this one seems to be very one-sided, and one could come to the conclusion that the majority of the residents of Bennington are against Monument View. Their silence should not be interpreted as support for the opposition, but rather an unwillingness to participate in the controversy and stay above the fray. The voices of reason are sometimes the quietest, but they are the very ones we need to listen to. Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak.
Is that it? All right. We're going to end the citizens' discussion. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the Kocher Drive streetscape discussion right now. This is a... Oh, okay, that's fine. Yep. Oh, yeah, that's fine. This is an update on the project on the pedestrian access in Kocher Drive.
Yes, I'm not here with Mark Andrews tonight. I'm here with the fancy slides and everything, but we did that before. I think this is the third or fourth time we've been before you folks on this particular project. Really, this is just an update, and hopefully this evening, if not next time, you guys would feel comfortable in allowing us to proceed with this project. But essentially where we are is the BCRC worked with the consultant to develop the conceptual design to improve pedestrian and bicycle access and amenities along Kocher Drive from East Road to the Aldi CVS driveway. You all have seen that design before. It's essentially a bike path type design with a separation from the roadway. You'll also recall that that project was funded by an earmark. And we attempted to design that project to be able to be funded completely by that earmark. Unfortunately, we weren't able to quite make that happen, and there was a funding gap that would need to be closed. And we proposed at the last time that you allow us to go back to the State of Vermont Agency of Transportation and attempt to close that gap. So we are asking this evening that you take a look at that proposal, which includes the following. The State of Vermont has promised to allocate an additional $150,000 to the project to cover what is currently about a $120,000 gap. So it gives a little bit of wiggle room. That is a 20% match, 80% grant, or with a 20% match, so we would have to come up with 20% of whatever that cost overrun is, which right now is projected at $120,000. We're also proposing that a portion of the project be constructed by the town highway crews as part of our annual sidewalk improvement budget. Usually that budget runs between $300,000 and $400,000 a year. We're proposing that this project is likely to cost about $50,000, and if we spread that over 2 fiscal years, it's about $25,000 impact on a $300,000 to $400,000 budget, which we hope you would find is reasonable. That's essentially the proposal. We worked hard with the Agency of Transportation to come up with that. I feel pretty comfortable, and I'm grateful to the folks at the Agency of Transportation who came up with those additional funds, and I would hope that you would feel it was appropriate for us to move forward into the design phase. We would not move forward with construction or even an approval of design, obviously, until this board had another opportunity to review that design and authorize us to move forward with construction. Any questions? I'm happy to try to answer.
You're looking for us to authorize that expenditures and move forward with this tonight, is it?
All we're looking for tonight is for your authorization to move forward with the design of the project based on the funding scenario we've set out. You would not be authorizing specific expenditure of funds until you've approved the final design.
We are proposing putting that out over 2 years and incorporating it into our normal annual budgets anyhow.
Yes, once you've looked at the design and feel comfortable that, yes, we want to go forward. Right now, we really want to make sure that you feel comfortable with this concept and that we can then take that concept of funding along with that concept of design, finalize it, get construction documents, come back to you folks, and then move forward with the bid process.
Anyone else have a question? Tom?
Basically, you're looking for approval of the concept tonight, and there's no dollars in, because we don't really know what the dollars are.
We're not asking for any money tonight, we just want to make sure you folks understand if we move forward, this is the way that we would propose moving forward to finance the project.
It sounds to me like it's an amount of money that we can put into our annual budget. It's not going to be any major cost overruns. We can just integrate that into our yearly sidewalk construction budget in the next coming 2 years.
I think I'm missing something here. The budget gap you have listed as 221,500, but then you break it down into 2 projects. Is that what we're doing?
Right. The way it works, and I apologize if that wasn't clear, from Performance Drive to East Road, the town would take that over. And because the town doesn't have to pay the exorbitant federal process, what I call premium, we would actually be out of pocket for about $50,000 for that project, which the feds would require quite an additional amount. And then that leaves a $120,000 budget gap, which the state has said we'll plug that with a $150,000 grant.
But we have to match 20%.
Well, we would have to match 20%. Absolutely. That's correct.
That's pretty much what we were talking about last time.
That's. Wanted to confirm with the state that they were comfortable with that. We still hadn't nailed down the agreement to pay that gap from the state, and now we have written agreement from them. So I would feel comfortable recommending that we authorize BCRC to continue with design and hopefully come back to you folks shortly with a design that you feel comfortable going out to bid for.
Looking for a motion on that or consensus?
Motion.
Probably should go for a motion.
I'll move that we.
Second.
Go forward. Any discussion? All in favor?
Thanks, everybody.
That is set here. Thank you, Dan. We can take this opportunity to talk about how we want to move forward with the grant application. We had a couple suggestions of maybe having a special meeting as a hearing, just, and then voting on it in the next regular meeting in open session, which I think is a good idea. It's looking at, I think by the next meeting, I'm hoping by the next meeting we'll have an idea when we can do that.
We still haven't gotten the grant letter.
The grant letter has come in, but I haven't had a chance to.
But I think we need to talk to Shires Housing and see if they're even going to accept the grant at this point, because if they're not going to accept it.
Confirm the re-permitting application, if they're still doing it. We have to see what those conditions will entail timing-wise, because there are issues in there. But I think by our next meeting on the
25th.
On the 25th, we should know that and be able to hopefully project it, when we could do a special meeting on that, or not, or decide, or know that we have to hold it off. But I can look into dates on that. We're running into Labor Day. But does that
I'm a little lost on what you're proposing, I guess, at this point. Well, what I was hoping to do is have this finalized in one direction or another sooner than later. I just don't see what the point of continually pushing this off is doing. It's not accomplishing anything. We have a decision we need to make.
I agree.
As a board, we need to make that decision.
I'm just not sure if we don't know right now what it's going to entail to meet the criteria of the grant. And before we make a decision when we're going to do that, I want to be able to have that explainable as to what,
What are the questions we don't have, we need answered, I guess?
We need to know if there's a policy they need adopted, there's certification that the project is viable, and, there's other there's a whole, they give you a laundry list of stuff in any grant, and I want to make sure that we have a handle on what our responsibility is in that versus what's Shire's responsibility. If there's a process that we have to go through before we make that vote, or if we want to make that vote. So I think we could have that ready, that discussion ready for the next meeting, so that we would know when, and hopefully have if we think we can do that, have a date for a special meeting to announce at that meeting.
That's a public document that would be available to the general public?
I don't know that. Stores
I
have
think
public documents?
once it comes to the board,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Once
So
it
it'll be
comes
part
to
of
the-
That would
part
outline
of
the
our minutes. Yeah.
That would outline the conditions. You'd have a response from Shires as to whether or not they think they can meet those conditions, a response from town staff as to what our responsibilities would be. So when we have all that together, and it may be as early as the next meeting, but I think if you're going to try to hold a special meeting, you're going to have to pick another night, and then the suggestion was to vote on the next following regular select board meeting. So that certainly is a process that would give everybody a chance to be heard.
Well, if we're looking to have that information that we need to see on our next regular scheduled select board meeting, which would be the 25th,
Right.
I mean, is there any reason we couldn't look to send that special meeting for a week past that tonight?
Well, that would be Labor Day Monday.
Labor Day.
So that's the issue. So, I mean, it's possible.
Don't have to have it on a Monday?
Yeah, we have to look at what the other meeting schedules are.
If we're not at the point where we can make a decision, which I don't think we are, we don't have
Correct.
enough facts, but
Correct.
we are at the point where we can all sit around here and tell the people where we lie on this project, because that's what they're really looking for, what we're thinking and what we've heard from them and where we now stand today.
My feeling is we've only heard during public comment session. We have not heard during any regular agenda meeting. And I expect that would be the case, that both the proponents and the opposition would speak to that during an agenda meeting.
So you're still on the fence and need to hear, or need to listen during that meeting before landing on a final decision, or having an opinion on the subject
I
at
may
this time?
have an opinion, but I don't think it's the time to voice it.
Okay.
Well, I would suggest that we would schedule that meeting for the Monday, the 8th of September at this point.
And that's a regular schedule.
That's a regular
That's a regular
meeting.
scheduled select board
Okay,
meeting.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So we bounce right through Mondays there, so we could, so you could be talking about an off Monday night, or you could be, if you want to keep it on Mondays, but there could be another meeting any of those nights.
I understand that September 1st is probably not the correct day to do that.
Right.
No.
But,
And we'd have to look at the meeting schedules, because the other commissions use this room for hearings and whatnot, and regular meetings. But we could work that out and have that, as I'm saying, we could probably work that out and have that information by the next meeting, as what dates are available. And,
My only fear is if we discuss it at the next meeting and we want to schedule it for the week after, that we're going to be telling people at a very short notice. And it's looking like we're going to push it back through towards the end of September if we wait to make that decision 2 weeks from tonight as to when that date's going to be, to give people proper notice of that.
And that might be the best thing to do, is set that meeting for the Monday, the 15th, if there's no other conflicts. Right, Monday? I don't have a calendar.
Yeah, that's
That's the middle
15th.
Monday, yeah.
I mean, that would not be normally a meeting night for us.
No, right.
And if this facility is available, that might be the time to do it.
Before we were dealing with some pretty tight timelines, how does that come into play here? Does anybody know?
The timelines generally on the grant acceptance are relatively long. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I believe the dates were pretty far out for when we'd have to have conditions met by.
If we had that, if we had the final public hearing on the 15th to hear from everybody, we could vote on it on the 22nd.
Yes,
I'd be okay with that.
Mhm.
Set that up as a tentative schedule, and we can confirm that.
fine.
Sure.
We can do that.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Let's do that. So September 15th is a
15th.
Monday night. And we're going to try and do it then, and then the vote would be on the 22nd at a regular open session meeting. All right.
What was the time of that
I would assume 6 o'clock. Does that work? It's our regular.
Six,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what people are used to, so.
We have to see if this room is available that
I
night.
think we can make it available.
You
More-
think we have the power to do that?
I think we do.
Just make sure there wasn't something else warned for this.
Hey,
but
the
I don't
warning would
think-
be out at
Right.
this point in time. They could
Right.
use the conference room for the police department.
Okay. All right, great.
All right.
Thank you. So. It's 9:15, 6 PM. Hearing. Okay. Next item is the management evaluation policy. Go ahead. All right. We'd had a draft last week that Tom made a slight revision to and passed around.
Right, probably just got it today, but it's
Yeah.
pretty much gives a little more flexibility to the chair relative to the process part of it.
Right.
But I think that's, if we adopt the policy, we have to decide on the process. And not to jump ahead to that point, but it would seem to me that the chair could actually designate a subcommittee of the board to work on a process recommendation and come back to us, rather than have a free-for-all today, because I haven't got an opinion on which way we should go with it.
I'd be acceptable to that. I don't know what the hell other.
Yeah. I mean, my question was, would we want to decide that in the policy that it's either a subcommittee or is the chair that sets up the process in advance instead of
I guess I'd prefer a random subcommittee.
a random subcommittee? Like, not appointed, but,
There's 3 people,
Volunteers.
4 people, and it's just drawn, and this year, you were responsible for setting this up and organizing it and making sure it works. That way, we can avoid, not that there would be, but any collusion in the future. And so if we can do that by just saying, keep this random, then let's do that.
all right, well, it couldn't be more than 3.
Well, then that's
Right,
fine.
just to be clear.
Right.
So would that, I mean, you want
I probably should suggest an amendment, or, a change to the policy that indicates that each year there would be a different subcommittee of the board designated by the chair to undertake the process.
Yeah, I mean, if we do this right, and I know
Yeah.
we're gonna make mistakes along the way, but if we do this right, there won't be any ability to have it bias. But if
Right.
we make some mistakes and some loopholes are found, I don't want, negative grading to be done and then brought to the board in a negative light or anything like that. I want it to be completely fair.
Right,
So,
that's kind of what I'm thinking, if we distinguish beforehand that it's either going to be the chair or
Yeah.
that organizes or the subcommittee instead of leaving it out to a choice. I think when it's a choice from year to year, it leaves an element of doubt as to,
yeah.
how the process was
The
decided.
only other thing
was
that I
my-
wanted to look at was within the coordination, the tasks anyway, we were talking about setting up the appropriate dates. If we could try and solidify specific dates, then at least it's known, the annual review's coming up, whether it be, the second Tuesday of June,
Right.
something like that. And so every year it's the same. It's going to continue to happen. What I don't want to see happen, I mean, we try and call meetings, and right now we're fumbling through a calendar, and we're at the end of September.
Yeah.
If that gets pushed off too far, we could miss something or scramble and miss some details, and I want us to make sure that we're,
Well, one of the things I've worked on with Stu is we've got a work plan from month to month of what the select board does annually. So we know, I have a list of when the tax rates are set and all that type of thing. We could add it to that, pick a month for that, and
But do we want to do it in coordination with, typically when we're doing budgets, that's when we decide on the manager's salary
yeah,
increase. So my thought would be you do it toward
January.
the end of that you don't want to do an evaluation in February and then not do anything about it until December.
Right.
and you could do it in October.
It might seem like October, I think, would be, we started to get our budget packets once, Stuart, Thanksgiving time.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
It's our
generally
Thanksgiving
Thanksgiving.
gift.
So, I mean, if that's a process that we could complete by,
Even if
say
we could get it
October.
done by the middle of November, and then it would only be like a month and a half.
Yeah, I think, I traditionally like to separate performance reviews and wage reviews. because I don't like the perception that it's one and the same. You know, so we have regular performance reviews, and then we have separate wage reviews. And the wage reviews obviously are based on how the company's doing, how much money there is. Your performance review is based on how you are doing, meeting goals and things like that. And I mean, too many times I've seen in business where your performance review gets watered down because the company's going through a slow period, and they're justifying not giving you a raise because, well, you're not working, you know, when you know people are doing well and working their hardest. So I tend to think October, early November, before those budget packets come out, we get that out of the way, and then we can have the budget discussion.
So
Sounds
maybe
like
to
a
have
good
it
idea.
completed by November 1st would be the,
I'd be either that or the 15th, the middle
Yeah.
of the month. That would still give us a month and a half.
Well, we could add to the work plan that November is to complete the review process, and October could be to begin the review process.
Yeah,
How's that?
that makes sense.
I'm just wondering if you really need to get that specific within the context of the policy itself, or really that is the process and the work plan? Because there's going to be slippage, and I hate to throw us out of context with the policy if we don't hit that
Right.
date. But
But if you don't have a specific date, sometimes it tends to get pushed off and pushed off, and
annual basis means annual basis. And,
Right.
You know, I think that if you have the committee working on it, and I think that's the critical thing, is to appoint the committee to work on the evaluation when that's done. And that really should be right around July 1st, or, you know.
The year
to get-
end, yeah.
Yeah. So get done.
Could we select a month? I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be a date, but you need to set some sort of timelines. It needs to be in there, because otherwise it could slip, even with the committee.
I can tell you just from the agenda standpoint, it's good to have it on a month, just to know that this is what we got to do, you know, make sure you're getting at it.
9 times out of 10, most evaluators make personnel evaluations the last thing on their list. Everything else comes in instead of it. And I agree with John. Put a period down by date X, it is done.
Yeah, so,
Period, the end.
and then you can work backwards as to
Can
where
work
the
backwards.
start
yeah,
date.
that's what they used to do
Because
in
it
the
will,
bank.
Yeah,
first 2 or 3 times we do it, it's going to be a longer process.
right.
Yeah. What I don't see, Tom, in what you have put together, which I think is very good, I don't see the place for the manager's self-evaluation. Did you mean to include that or exclude that? That's generally a part of a good evaluation process.
Well, that's the process rather than the policy, right? All right, so that would be,
I think it's a 360.
Okay,
yeah.
maybe it's a
But,
720.
Yeah, good point. But using, you know, just the draft that we've been talking about, so if you would put in under the, right at the purpose and scope, where it talks, the second paragraph,
Now,
the town manager will be formally evaluated on an annual basis using a performance evaluation process that may be reviewed and revised annually or as otherwise determined by the board. The evaluation, and this is the addition, shall be completed on or before whatever that date is. And I haven't got a,
Okay.
so and I think we're talking about November.
I like the November, so that it's done before the budget.
Well, before the budget doesn't necessarily make sense, right? Because the budget's getting set up for the next year.
Right, and just saying that becomes your focus after that, is that, you know, you start working on the budgets and things. If you're doing it in July, you're doing it with a new board. You know, if you want it by July 1st, you have to start the process in May or June, and you have a new board come in April. There's going to be people without a lot of input.
Right.
I'm thinking if you wait till fall, you know, October, November, then you've got
Got about a
people,
year.
you know, if everybody's had a chance to work a while with the manager, and
Yeah, it's also going to depend on which, you know, metrics and pieces of information we're going to be evaluating.
Right.
Because if we're going to judge it on whether the budget goes up or down, then yeah, let's do it at budget season. But if we're going to do it on, you know, when the tax rate is set, then it has to be during the summertime. So, I mean, it depends where we're going to, or what we're going to set as our goals before we can really set that date and time. But in either way, I would like to see some sort of tracking method that would allow us to determine our cutoff point. Even if we're saying that we want budgetary goals, we can still track the last 12 months.
Right.
and see
Yeah.
where we're at.
Sure.
And with that in mind, I guess I lean more towards what Tom was saying, keeping it a year to year, or year end, instead of during budget season when we have so much else, there are other things going on to try and set that budget. We're already coming in, 3 or 4 extra days.
Well, that's January, so yeah, that's, so I'm thinking if we get that October, November, before you get into that holidays and then budget meetings. After that, you go right into town meeting and elections, and then then you have a new board.
The new board might be a good thing, in terms of setting goals as well, having them be a part of that so they feel some responsibility their first year instead of having 6 months or 8 months of
Right.
not having a say or not being part of that conversation.
I'm just wondering if
But
it's,
then if you have the same board doing the evaluation and the budget, you have more continuity. You have a board that would hopefully understand both.
Right.
Instead of splitting it up and,
I guess I still see the policies as like a standalone, this is what we expect.
right.
right.
Really, the process is what is going to be a continual work in progress, depending upon the committee.
Yeah.
But the committee really, I think, could be assigned right now to start working on a process protocol, so that we have something to work from. And in that, it's probably going to have some dates for us to look at when the entire board would adopt the process that we'd expect, that at least that first board, the first go-around. Recognizing that every year, we're probably going to look at process to see if it's met the goals that we expect. But that's just...
Yeah, I think there's a good point there. I mean, we can remove the date from the policy, make the date part of the process, and then if we decide to change part of the process down the line, change the date or something, it's a process change, but we can leave the policy as an annual review, et cetera, et cetera.
Stu, when do you go through your review process with your staff?
We do that in April and May, finishing up in June.
That might be something to consider as well.
Yeah, and that could be, and we could set a subcommittee up to figure that out, and make recommendations based on that. I don't have a problem with that. Does that work?
Could I recommend to the chair that you designate 3 board members to work on...
Have fun.
Since I work
This
on
is
the
the
policy, I'll
acid
step
test. Do I have 3 volunteers to work on the subcommittee process? John McFadden,
I will.
Sharon, and Michael?
I'm happy to do it.
Well, in the F2 fashion, we have 3 volunteers. So.
Jeez.
Okay,
Problem solver.
there you go. All right, well, thanks. Why don't you work on that? And,
Thank you, Mike.
What we got going here?
Sharon. Okay, so you're gonna be the process subcommittee? And you can have something by Friday?
I was thinking tomorrow.
Set a date.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's gonna get us moving.
Yeah,
forward and
it's
make
true.
sure-
I mean, you're gonna have some targets just to meet. How long do you think you would need to get back to us with something based on your schedules and when you can?
I mean, I'd still like to push to have this done, if I'm breaking this year up into quarters, by the end of this first quarter, or have at least something identified. And that's gonna mean we come to you guys, either every meeting up until that point, there's gonna be an agenda item that has us talking about where the process is at.
Greg, describe the deliverable you expect to see, even in draft form.
Well, I think timing suggestions is one of the things we just talked about, when it will be happening. What we would use as a communication device, as far as how the review is put together by the board or the subcommittee, presented, and what comments you would need from the manager to, for goal setting, reflection on previous goals. What I normally do is I start a review from square one. Where did we start? What were the goals on day one when somebody was hired? And then I work forward to what were the goals at the last review, and how are we doing on all those, and what are the goals now? And then at the end is how you feel like you're doing on your goals. What what help do you need, and, you
So
know,
we're gonna have to
that type of thing, so.
basically set up the evaluation,
Yeah,
the
and-
questions from the evaluation.
And we have a lot of templates for them. I mean, it's not, I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel. There's
No.
certainly plenty of data there in that packet that we all have. But I think that's it. How do we touch on the things that are important to us, important to the people of Bennington, important to keeping things moving forward, and getting regular feedback and creating a record of the position so that, you know, if there is a new hire, they know how they're measured and how their feedback is given and taken, and you can move forward like that.
So how do we want to communicate? John, I know you're the one that's probably going to be the most difficult to
Most
get
difficult?
a hold of.
Oh, jeez.
As
I'll
far
be
as,
easy to get a hold of, but I
as
might be
far
harder
as
to pin
meetings
down.
and stuff, so, I mean, do we want to do it a face-to-face?
I think it's easier to have a conversation face-to-face, and things seem to move along quicker than via email.
Well, I
Why
think
God
so
invented
too.
coffee shops and bars.
Exactly.
I've opened a bar.
I'd be willing to try and set a date right now for
Yep.
for our first meeting, just to know that we're moving forward.
Maybe you can do that offline.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that
Okay.
after the meeting.
Right, and then just let me know when you think you're ready to put something together. We'll get on the agenda and we'll start from there.
Okay.
Well, I think I would like to have it as an agenda item, even if we just update you as to where we're at. It might be a
Okay.
2-minute conversation the first meeting, it might be a 2-hour conversation the first meeting. We might hit a number of roadblocks, but in either case, I'd like to continue to push this and have it on the
Yeah.
agenda every meeting.
Okay, that's not a problem.
Do you want to adopt the policy tonight, or are you going to move to the next meeting?
Would
You
we be
have
able to
that-
look at a couple of those amendments, or
Yeah, you have that
potential
one
amendments?
correction that you want to make, or are we not going to correct
I
that?
don't think everybody got it in time to read the whole thing today, Tom,
Okay,
so why don't we?
that's fine, I just don't.
I'll get that. I sent it out in the same format. I don't
And
think.
feel
it
free to,
worked.
make some changes, and we'll try to adopt it the next time, so when you're out there working, you'll have a policy.
Yeah,
Shoot
so
you a
let's,
couple of changes that I've got.
Great, thanks.
Could we get it sent in a PDF, though?
yeah,
I don't get it as
I
a
can save
PDF,
it
and I
as-
can't open it up and save it
Sure.
to my other file. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
we can
Not
get
a
that,
problem.
and make it part of the minutes next time and
Thank you.
get a final draft on that.
Thanks
All
for
right.
your
All right, excellent.
patience.
The next point is the proclamation for the Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, which is...
appointments.
Oh, appointments, I'm sorry. I've got notes all over my notes. Next one is the appointments, boards, and commissions. We have an opening on the Bennington Housing Authority, and we have one applicant that has been interviewed. We have a motion for
I move we
appointment.
appoint Scott Fox to that position.
Bennington Housing. We have
I'll
a
second that.
Sharon seconds. Do we have any discussion?
Having visited with him tonight, I think it's a good,
Yeah.
good nomination.
in the building.
Yeah, he seems very focused. He's a tenant. He's been involved for 17 years, so I think that speaks well. Get somebody like that on the board, so. Anybody else? All right, all in favor? That's unanimous. All right. Thank you, Scott. All right, now the proclamation. We have a proclamation, Childhood Cancer Awareness Month is September. It's a national movement to bring awareness to the struggle of children with cancer. Sharon, would you like to read that?
Of course I would.
Thank you.
Proclamation Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, September 2014. Whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and the Kids Cancer Connection report that cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among U.S. children under the age of 15, this tragic disease is detected in more than 15,000 young people each year. And whereas 1 in 5 of our nation's children loses his or her battle with cancer, many infants, children, and teens suffer from long-term effects of comprehensive treatment, including secondary cancers. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children Incorporated and the Kids Cancer Connection Incorporated are dedicated to helping these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and the Kids Cancer Connection provide a variety of vital patient psychosocial, just lost it, services to the children and undergoing cancer treatment at Vermont's Vermont Children's Hospital at Fletcher Allen in Burlington, as well as participating hospitals throughout the country. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and the Kids Cancer Connection also sponsor nationwide Courageous Kid Recognition Award ceremonies and hospital celebrations in honor of a child's determination and bravery in the battle against childhood cancer. Now therefore, we, the Bennington Select Board, do hereby proclaim September 2014 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the town of Bennington, dated at Bennington, Vermont, this 11th day of August, 2014.
Do we need a motion? We just sign that, Stuart?
We can circulate it for signature
Circulate it for signature.
or do a
Okay.
motion, whichever you prefer.
That's good. Thank you, Sharon.
Sure.
Stuart, we have a manager's report tonight.
I have just one action item that came in very late after the packets had gone out. This is a salvage yard license. Under the state of Vermont rules and regulations, those folks who operate salvage yards must every 5 years receive a license that is signed by the select board and accompanied by a certificate of completion from the planning and permitting office. This is a license for Joshua Green at 473 Chapel Road. He has complied with all of the necessary state and local laws as for the operation of a salvage yard, and I am circulating this for your signatures. He will then pay a $25 fee, and it will be forwarded to the state of Vermont.
This is a new business, Stu?
Actually, it's not a new business. It's been in business for a number of years. Originally operated, I believe, by his grandfather.
The new law that has to be,
No, it's not a new law. It's a new license for him. He's taken over the operation.
oh,
Is that it, Stu?
That is it.
Okay. John, do you have any other business?
the only question I had actually, Stu, is for you, wondering how things were going, if you're able to make any headway on some of the data collection that we had talked about in the last few meetings.
Actually, not had a lot of chance to work on that. I did share the information you provided me from those major cities, and Mike has indicated that he thinks some of that would be valuable for us, so we're taking that information and trying to bring it down to a scale that fits
Not 90
Bennington.
pages.
Yeah, not 90
Yeah.
pages. So we are working on it, John, and that was very helpful.
Okay, and the only thing I'm thinking about is with our subcommittee coming up, when we are setting the goals and setting that bar, we're going to want to use that data to try and help set a reasonable goal. So that's it. If you hit any roadblocks, let us know.
Will do.
That's it.
All right, thanks, Justin.
No, I don't have anything.
James?
Just one question for Stu, and it came from one of the Battle Day organizers, and it had to do with Safford Street and whether or not it'll be completed in time for Battle Day. The concern was that because of the sizable ditches, that there may be a risk of somebody being injured.
It's my understanding that we're going to be putting our full efforts to make sure that street is accessible and available as of this Friday.
But will the cement be completed?
The curbing should be done. I think the curbing is scheduled over the next 2 days, and we won't start pouring sidewalk until after Battle Day.
All right. Okay,
So
good.
weather permitting with the forecast.
Well, I'm still, the concern that he voiced, and I've seen it around, people that have seen this curbing done, it stands alone for a period of time before it's filled in. And with that many people that are going to be on Safford Street preparing for the parade there, I think there is probably somewhat of a risk.
We don't believe there will be a risk come Battle Day.
Just wanted to mention it. Thanks.
Sharon?
Nothing, just come down and enjoy the parade on Sunday.
Michael?
Likewise.
Thomas?
Could you tell me about River Road? What's happening? It looks,
We are still,
who did the work? Did we do it, or was that contracted out?
that was, the original work was contracted out to a local contractor, and unfortunately, we hadn't gone deep enough to the substrata to deal with what appears to be a supersaturated soil down, I can't tell you the depth, something like 8 to 9 feet deep. We're going to have to be digging all of that out and replacing it from the bottom up. It's an expensive project that we're looking at, so we're, at this point, leaving the barriers in place until we fully understand and can bid the project out. We won't take that on ourselves.
Would the contractors that did the work have any culpability or responsibility?
No, we don't believe so, because he did what was suggested to us by our engineers. The unfortunate part is we could not understand at the time that the problem was much more severe further down, at a greater depth.
It's going to be an expensive
It will be
fix.
an expensive project.
Is that it, Tom?
I'm sure, thanks.
All right, thanks. Yeah, again, Battle Day, it's the 50th anniversary of the parade. The volunteers, especially the Bennington Fire Department, have put together a program that starts on Friday and goes right through the weekend. Should be noted, Friday is the Battle Day holiday at town offices and I believe state offices as well. So offices are closed on Friday. But it's always great to see everybody come down. The weather forecast for the weekend does look good. Again, thanks to the fire department and all the volunteers involved in making that happen and bringing everybody out every year. All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, and all in favor, any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.